Siren Blood Curse is a third-person stealth horror game and remake of Forbidden Siren that follows multiple characters as they infiltrate an abandoned village and are exposed to the unnatural forces harboured there. The game is available on PlayStation 3.
Hey, wait, what are you... Ah, shit!
Atmosphere. In the daytime, Siren Blood Curse is eerie, with the thick mist and rural Japanese landscape backed by the game's strange, unhinged music. But as the game transitions to night, it turns dark and grimy. There's road damage and flooding on top of the blood splatters and washed out colours. The game is abnormally dark, and the camera is so close behind the player character that it feels like the night is endless. It's claustrophobic and stifling. The environments you explore are remnants of derelict hospitals and abandoned mines that hide the horrific Shibito, and the way they act makes the town feel like a nest that you're intruding on. The stealth elements exponentially raise tension in more difficult parts of the game, with the power of being able to see through the enemy's eyes helping the stealth, but using the power can be creepy since watching the Shibito go about their business as if nothing's wrong is unsettling somehow. But over everything is this feeling of hopelessness, as things get increasingly desperate and there doesn't seem to be a way out of the twisting, maddening landscape of the town. It's being consumed, and so is everyone and everything inside it, and it's hard to see a way out of a pit so dark. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. Most of the game's fear is generated by the body horror aspects of dealing with the Shibito. Their black blood bleeds from their eyes and their cold, pale skin gives way to the more insectoid creatures, with some sporting wings that fly around in an unsettling way or make disconcerting buzzing sounds. They giggle to themselves or perform strange vocal fluttering sounds and strange groans in Japanese. Where things start to go off into the realms of the grotesque is how they turn into completely alien blobs of disgusting insectoid-like creatures, maggots, larvae, and other things that are just unpleasant to deal with entirely. Getting into combat with them is often a struggle, and they'll climb on top of you or grab you, and it's again repulsive but more often annoying. Having to club them to death or shoot them never gets any more pleasant. The game doesn't really use jump scares or scripted events, it just has a lot of roaming enemies. The stealth can be pretty intense, and again, the darkness plays into it with bumping into objects in the dark alerting nearby Shibito to your location, and some characters like Bella can't fight back, which means an instant game over if she's found, which again can be a little frustrating. But the game has a lot of frustration to it, with constantly resurrecting enemies and clunky controls and combat. Fighting more than one Shibito can be extremely risky depending on your weapon, and the game's checkpoints are only sometimes decent, which again is frustrating because the tasks the game sets you never seem difficult until you consider how quickly some things can go wrong. The game walks the line between being freaky and being frustrating quite often, but most of the fear is generated by body horror and isn't really scary in any other way besides concept. That's still one Harry Mason. Sound design. The music can be best described as ritualistic and unhinged, with eerie melodies playing over lopsided beats, people groaning into a chorus, or the famous On There's More Not, producing an unnatural shrill synth with a melody so unnerving that it's hard to forget. The music is incredibly creepy or invokes a feeling of hopelessness. There's a lot of unique sounds and cool analog synthesizer pulses mixed together with ritual chanting with a heavy delay to give it a heady feel. The game's ambiance is realistic enough, with it keeping the music quiet apart from raindrops and other environmental sound effects during some of the gameplay sections. The voice acting for living characters is a bit of a mixed bag, with some feeling pretty wooden and artificial, but other characters are a bit better. The Shibito, on the other hand, have extremely disturbing voices. Their strange grunts and giggling is unsettling no matter how many times you hear the quivering Japanese voices, and combined with the unhinged music really cements them as deranged. The sound effects are pretty good and work well with the environments, but the standout stuff is again the noises related to the Shibito. Their bug-like warbling noises are weird and distressing to hear and let you know that they're nearby. The directional audio works pretty well with identifying the locations of Shibito in the area, since they always mutter things to themselves. Overall, the sound design is pretty fantastic and leads heavily into the creepiness of its environments and enemies. That's 2 Harry Masons. Gore. Most of the gore comes from the insect-like Shibito and their gross transformations. Just examining their bodies is repulsive, with wings growing out of their eyes and maggot-like enemies that are bulbous and gnarly, with human heads on bloated bodies. The fact that there's still human features on them is unpleasant to behold. The more human-like gore is still bizarre in its own way, with it raining blood and blood-soaked lake water entering human veins to revitalize people. Most of it is strange, even in concept, which in this case isn't a bad thing. That's 3 Harry Masons.
Feel that just now? It felt like everything shook for a second.
Story. After hearing that an abandoned village in rural Japan is the site of human sacrifices, a TV crew arrives and interrupts a local ritual, and another visitor to the area, Howard Wright, runs in and saves a local girl from a ritual, setting off a series of events. There's no diary entries, and the game is presented in missions. The story is a little vague sometimes, being simply moved from A to B, but the cutscenes that interlude things give meaning to the actions most of the time. It is a little hard to make sense of some events because of how convoluted the story can seemingly get. It incorporates a lot of things that are somewhat unexpected, but it's often so weird and difficult to get into that it ended up meaning very little by the time it was over. Making the final score 3 out of 5 Harry Masons. Siren Blood Curse is a deeply creepy game on many levels. It's gross and repulsive and has a pretty unique atmosphere, but it's held back by confusing and frustrating game design. Again, I'd like to remind you the whole thing is down to my opinion on horror games. If you don't share this opinion, then that's cool. I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I escaped Hanada Village, I didn't give in to the corpse people, and you shouldn't either. There will be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. Now let's go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.